Hey, welcome to another episode of Electrical Theology and Esoteric Life Coaching. I am your host, Charles, where we unfold the moment with an undefended heart. And we do this by taking responsibility for our thoughts, actions, and emotions. And these words, thoughts, actions, and emotions, are very key to my entire sermon, if you will. Thoughts are the things that thoughts are what create things. Thought is what takes from the supernatural into the natural. Thought is one thing, but it's also a no thing. So it's first a no thing, then the thought becomes, and then it becomes a thing, right? Or something, person, or place. And when I always say person, place, or thing, basically everything goes into those three categories in life. Everything in life is either a thing or no thing or an unformed thing. It's either a person, place, or thing. So a place is everywhere on this planet or outside this planet, even inner space, outer space, the upper verse, inner verse, outer verse, underverse, all the verses there are, and the multiverses. So basically the person, place, and things, it pretty much covers everything there is, just like health, wealth, and love. When people come to me for insider coaching or readings or what have you, then it's under one of those three categories, health, wealth, or love. And each one of those can be interlinked with the other one. You can have healthy love, wealthy love. You can have the love of wealth or the love of health. Or, you see what I'm saying? You can intermingle those three however you want to. It's all part of the Trinity. So your thoughts, actions, and what actions you take on your thoughts, right, is acting on the ions, in which thought is just ions. So when thought becomes a thought, it first had to form ions from the unformed that. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about when I say that, then you got to go back to some of the beginning videos, and I explained that, this, Shambhala, hierarchy, God, and the seven frequencies, or the seven consciousness, and the order to those, and how they are the primal evolution of what comes out of the no thing or space into something, or the realities in what we live in today, or a simulation. All right. And then emotions are what energy are we emoting once we take that action. The action then has energy behind it. The energy is what we know psychologically as your emotion. But when you understand that it's just energy in motion, and you take responsibility for that energy in motion, then what comes from your thought, action, i.e. words, then those, how you emote those words, and we'll talk about the tonality of your words later, but when you understand the tonality or the frequency or the waveform of your thoughts in the word form, then that will have an effect, which then creates a cause, which then creates an outcome, and then thus gives you a life experience. All right, so these words are very important, guys. Each one of these words have a significance, and as we go throughout this program that I've created for you, then it'll make a whole lot more sense. So today we're going to continue on with part 3, which is the intonation, which we just talked about. And where we left off from yesterday, we talked about the Moravian modality or model, which is when you're communicating, words are only 7% of being heard or understanding the communication, and the tonality is how you raise your voice, lower your voice, keep it neutral, right? Or the physiology, your body language, right? Your body language tells the story the most, right? We talked about truth, and for me, my truth is congruency, and we talked about the congruency yesterday. Today, being truth for me, it's not anyone else's, it's mine, which means it's reliability, integrity, honesty, genuineness, transparency, authentic, compassionate, empathetic. And compassion, because we're passing our ions. Empathetic is we're on the path. Where the energy and motion, the EM of path, is empath. And so empathic is that we're just on the path of that, because that's its plan. And that it is you, your higher all-knowing self, your omnipotent self. Makes sense now. Do we always stick to the plan? No. Do we screw up the plan? Absolutely. Are we perfect? No, and we'll get into that today as well. So let's continue on. So part of this tonation is, first, we've been talking about the communications, and this is the third part, as we said. So there's 4 levels of effective communication. So there's what I mean. So the intention behind your communication. Right? We can hear a Southern woman, a Southern belle, say, "Oh, bless your heart," and say it in the nicest way, but it really means "F you." Right? So what they mean is one thing, and how they say it's another thing. And so what I say is the first words out of your mouth is where miscommunication happens. Now we knew the Moravian system is that 7% of the words, right, is the lowest form of communication, effective communication. So what comes out of our mouth, that 7%, is very misconstrued and not understanding. There's a cute little sign I saw at a store the other day, where it said, "We need your dough." Now, if you're a baker, that's going to have one definition or one meaning. But if you are someone accepting tips, then that's going to have a different meaning. Right? We need your dough. Right? It's spelled, different. NEED, DOE, right? Or however they spell dough. And then we need your dough, and so that's KNEAD DOUGH, right? But so the words, if I said those words, you don't really know what I mean unless I've given already a foundation or context, right? That makes sense, guys. All right. Is this all right with you, this communication? If this is all right with you, leave me a like below. Let me hear your comments about it, and definitely subscribe. So what I say, so basically there's what you say and what you mean, right? That should be simple enough to understand. Right? What do you mean by that? Can you clarify that for me? You know what I said? No, I hear what you said, but I don't know what you mean by what you said. Right? So there needs to be further explanation. And that's when we talked about the immediacy, which we'll remind you today again, that if you're not understanding something within the communication, especially the words being only 7%, are effective communication, then we need to delve further by asking questions or questioning what their energy is behind that word, their emoting ion behind that word. Right, what did you hear? Right, perceived reality. Now, everyone has a unique perceived reality. No two realities are the same. So the way you say something, the way someone hears it, is totally different. Now, I recommend studying semiotics. It's the study of symbols, which I studied it pretty much my whole life, and I still don't understand a lot of it because it's so in-depth. And the colleges try to make it a disciplined study, but it's just too broad and vast that they couldn't, so it's just intermingled within all studies. So your perceived reality is based off of your experiences, your life experiences and events, right? And how you were conditioned, how you were brainwashed, basically, how you were under other people's realities or forced realities or hypnagogic realities, right? So how you perceive something is based off of your experiences, right? So if a military person is telling you that military is needed to keep peace, but yet you're talking to a peace lover, and the peace lover is not really going to understand that because they're all about peace, nor will the military person understand the peaceful person's side, right? Because they each have a perceived reality, right? So if those two individuals, the military and the peaceful person, wants to get together, then they're going to have to find common ground, right? And open up and say, okay, why are you in the military? Well, I'm defending this peace that you have, right? And the peace person can say, well, we don't need your military. If we didn't have military, then we would have peace on earth. So you can take a pro or con either way to those conversations. But again, it starts a rapport. We talked about this in the last couple of videos, is wrapping and reaching each other's frequencies. Are we on the same page? If not, how can we get there? So your goal to communication is how can you get on the same page or the same note or tone, right? That tonality. So what you assume, right? Just because someone said something, again, words are miscommunicated as soon as someone opens their mouth. Right? What do you assume? I don't know the whole story, so I cannot assume anything. Right? If I try to assume something without having all the facts or data or all this information or your insight of your life experiences, then I really don't know what you're saying, so that's why I'm always questioning energy or ions. Right? So when you assume, it's just hearing and biased consciousness. So you're mishearing because of your own biased consciousness. Right? You won't be able to receive someone else's perception if you're not open to it because you're stuck in your own and you're not willing to hear another side. And today they try to divide us by not hearing the other side, that is somehow racist or it's sexist or any of the other X's that are out there. Is they want you divided because they don't want you communicating. There used to be a sect in the Buddhist temples, the silent monks. They took a vow of silence, and it wasn't because of God. It was because the manuscripts which they were interpreting, if all of them got together and talked about it, it would be a different reality than what we have been presented with in history. So they wanted them silent. In today's time, they want you divided and not talking to one another. But why I'm teaching these classes or bringing you these videos, because I want you to understand how to communicate properly. And if you're having arguments with other people, it's because you're having arguments with yourself. So these tools are going to help you have a negotiation with yourself, an emotional, heartfelt conversation, right? Conversation, converse with your eye on your higher self, that part of you, this part of you, the Shambhala part of you, the hierarchy you, and the God you. All right? Let's move on. Hopefully this is making sense to you guys. If not, leave me a comment. Like it. All right? So I'm hoping you're liking all this stuff. Why communications or miscommuning, right? Which is just missing unity with self or others. So why miscommunication? Well, we've talked about a few of these today because words are misunderstood. The English language is hard as hell to learn or understand, especially if you're someone coming in, because of, like I just said, kneading the dough, it's two different definitions. And there's a host of others I can give you that most people are miscommunicating, because we have so many words that sound exactly the same, spelled differently, but have different meanings. They, there, right? It's confusing. And then when we throw contractions in there, that just makes it even harder. Right? So when people have contracted their lives, and when they communicate, they're contracting, which means you're not getting the full story. This is why communication happens. And so it's up to us to take ownership of how we're speaking, and then being open and undefended and hearing truly deep listening to that other side. It doesn't mean you have to like, dislike, agree, or disagree. It's just listen to the other side. Now, if you want to open a dialogue, then open a dialogue, but do it from an inquisitive, right? You're questioning ions because you don't know. Don't ask a question to keep the debate going, but ask the question to understand that person's perception even more, right? So really what we're miscommunication is just you're missing unity, right? You're missing the communing, right? The contact, the one-on-one, the group on groups, or whatever this is. You're not communing, so there's no way possible that if you're not communing with yourself, right, having a unity with yourself, the heart and the mind together, then you're going to have a very difficult time opening up and manifesting to the things you want in this life, the things that you're choosing to manifest in your life. Then it's going to be difficult to get them. Not to say you cannot get them. I'm just saying, if you're trying to live from your heart's perspective and bring the mind in to make it happen, right? If you're only bringing the mind first, chasing the money, then the heart's never going to be satisfied. So if you want a true communion of the heart and mind, then you have to live it from the heart. The heart's open in front, and then the heart tells the mind what to do, but they're partners. It makes sense? So it could be like a business. One person's the one in front, and then the other person's good at the back, behind the scenes, running the numbers and all that, but the other person's good out front in front of the cameras, right? So that's the heart and the mind, but they work together. Without the other one doesn't exist, or it will miscommunicate. So once you have that unity with yourself, then you can have a unity not only with people, places, and things around you, but also off-world and interdimensional, all the verses, under-verses, and outer-verses, and over-verses. Right? Any of these verses, right, you have the ability to communicate, because now you have a whole tool bag full of communication skills, and it's just not words. You'll check in with your body language. Right? You'll see about your intention behind the words, the energy behind the words. Right? You'll check in with yourself with all this before you even speak a word, and isn't in alignment with your heart. If you're speaking without the heart, then it's egoic, and it's going to become complex. Your communications will be complex and misunderstood or misheard. Okay? So we are imperfect beings and therefore imperfect communicators. So anyone trying to be a perfect communicator, you can be great and rehearse something and stand in front and do a TED talk for 22 minutes, right? But as soon as you're off camera and you're having a conversation, you're not going to be the same way you were on camera. Just like most people aren't the same in front of when they're on the video here. We make mistakes, but we sort of edit those out. I try not to edit. The only thing I really edit out is ums and stuff, or if I swat a fly or something, I'll edit that out. It's comical, but do I want to leave it in? Not really. Not right now. Maybe later. Or do a whole bloopers roll of me being imperfect. Right? So none of us are perfect. So if someone's chasing perfection, it's not going to happen. Unless you understand that we are imperfect, perfect beings. Right? We're perfect at being imperfect. Then we can play with that, sure. But our hearts are defended, right? So we're imperfect, and because we're imperfect, we're always making sure that we want to look our best, if you will, in front of people, or be our best. And the heart is about being authentic. It's about bringing who you are unfiltered. It doesn't mean being an ass and just saying what is all the time. It's about negotiating the energy that's in front of you or around you. And if being an ass is relevant to that conversation, then be the ass. But if it's not called for, then you can feel that it's not called for, and you can come at it a different way, right? And then because we're imperfect communicators, therefore, when we try to speak, a lot of it's defended because we don't want someone looking and seeing our imperfection. And so we try to put up a facade, or that superficial front that we talked about videos past. But it's all egoic. And then the way you hear that communication is a biased viewpoint. Because we're imperfect, we don't have the whole picture, we're defending our egos, our hearts, we're protecting those hearts, then immediately anything that comes out of your mouth is biased because it's egoic, and that's based on a limited perspective, which is from the past. Making sense now? Good. All right, so what you hear leads to your assumption, so that's a perceived reality. So the way you even have a reality right now, the way I have a reality, is because of what I've heard, what I've seen, what I smelt and touched and tasted and experienced, and what I felt. Right? That's my reality, based off of my senses. Right? But that's my reality, and there's no two people that will ever have my reality. Right? I'm a unique being, just as you are a unique being, and you have a unique way of communicating. Right? So what you hear in this life leads to your assumptions, because we're missing pieces, because we're imperfect, and therefore your perceived reality is not really anyone else's reality. So the way we start communicating and have better and effective communication is by asking questions. Right? Not being the inquisitor, not being the authoritarian, but let's sitting down and having a great, open-hearted, undefended, unfolding moment conversation. Yeah? All right. Hopefully you're getting this and understanding this stuff, guys. All right? I work hard to bring this stuff to you, and hopefully it is making sense. Because we have this miscommunication, and that's going to lead us to the lack of immediacy. Now, what do I mean by that? Right? If you're defended, or your heart's defended, if you're egoic, then you're quick to lash out. You're quick to reflect what you just felt and throw it back at somebody else without thinking or without checking in with the heart. But the lack of immediacy then goes into miscommunication. So the way we stop that lack of immediacy is by having the immediacy, a conscious immediacy, a heartfelt immediacy, to say quickly what it is you just felt from that person. Now, if you felt offended, which everyone in the world is offended by something these days, right, is that then state that offendedness, right? But it's your perspective of what you were offended. It's not theirs. You cannot put and project your ego onto their ego because of your life experience. If you put your life experience and project it on them, then you're imposing your will on somebody else. So if you don't like someone else imposing their will on you, then don't do it to someone else. Make sense? State quickly what it is that you felt. And if you felt offended, then ask that person or explain to that person immediately. Don't hold off. Don't go back and mull it over or go bitch at it to your friends or family or whatever. Right? Have the courage. Oh, that's the heart. Courage and heart, same root word. And step up. Right? Stand tall. Eyes straight. Eyes connected. Open-hearted. And unfold that moment. Hey, I just felt that what you said. Right? didn't vibe with me. Now, I would encourage you as well not to use the word offended. It's so overused today, and it's misused, and it's miscommunicated, right? If you are a military, your offense is good. In martial arts, defense is good, right? You can go in the attack or you can go in the defense. It just depends on the called situation, right? Or the situation and what it calls for, right? So by immediately stating what is, not yelling or screaming, but simply asking, right? Hey, what you just said, here's how I feel about that, right? I don't even have to put anything on that. I'm just going to own my feeling. That person, no one can offend me. Only I and my own insecurities and imperfections can feel, and I can feel offended. But let's take that word off. Let's get rid of that label. And what did you feel? Well, I felt like you were trying to get one over on me, or I feel that you were trying to A, B, C, or D on me. Right? Or I felt that maybe I misunderstood what you said. Can you repeat that differently? Right? And if you're saying it in an undefended, open-hearted, reframing back to them, then they're going to feel your energy, and then they have a choice in that moment to open their heart because they're feeling yours, and then rephrase it or reframe it in a non-quote unquote offensive way. That makes sense? So I encourage you not to use that word hereafter, guys. So stay clear, right? Check in with the feelings and your truth, and truth is congruent and consistent. If someone acts well on a date, they look great, everything's consistent, congruent, but all of a sudden you go somewhere and they're just yelling at somebody, is that congruent with what you presumed or assumed about that person? Because you don't know that person. That was your insight from your energy that you were feeling. And you're like, oh, this person's the greatest in the world. And all of a sudden you go to a restaurant and yell at someone. Is that who you want to be around? And then you can have that conversation. Hey, I'm curious, why is it you felt you needed to yell at someone, right? Can you enlighten me? And let them explain, right? To get a further understanding, because if you just jump to a conclusion without asking, then that's on you, not them, right? They're not going to be, what are some of the labels I hear all the time? I was going to bring up a bunch of labels, but basically you believe someone then is the persecutor or the prosecutor or the offender, and therefore you're going to feel offended, or you're going to be the victim, and therefore you're going to look for some savior or some saving grace in that moment by getting up and leaving. If that's what you want to do, great. But if you don't deal with that issue immediately, then the next date you go on or the next conversation you have is going to end up the same because you didn't change. All right? All right, and we'll end with this basically. So the intonations, and we're going to break that word down. Intonation, we can look at it as intoning the ions, the tones that are coming in, right? The tone or energy, frequency, all the same to me. The tone or the way the energy is flowing in or from you, out of you, from the esoteric to the exoteric in a waveform manner, then how is the other person across from you feeling that in the way in which you intoned it? Now, part of being an effective communicator and asking questions, we can then tone up or down or stay in the middle, and each one then has a different reaction by somebody else. So intonation, we can also look at this word as the tone of your ions, basically. And we can break that word even further down, is that into the ions or into the nation, right? So the nation is basically their world of energy, their unique frequency. So when you hear intonation or intonation, it's the same thing. It's basically their pattern of waveform coming off of them. And if your pattern is differently, then they're going to be out of phase. And so by questing ions or adapting to their energy, then you're on the same wavelength. And now you'll be able to get one another, right? And you're like, oh, I get you now, I get you. Well, appreciate you explaining that. That's awesome. So we're going to tone up or question back to the client, right? When they say certain things, like, oh, I just want to quit my job. Oh, you want to quit your job, huh? Right? I'm toning up, which is making them, is that I'm posing a question to them, right? I'm bringing my volume up or my amplitude up or my intonation up by saying, you want to quit your job, huh? So that makes them want to sort of explain back in one sense, right? Why you're wanting to quit their job. Now, the other one is you can tone it down, right? Have the frequency go down. Use a lower voice. Right? The other one's a higher voice, the other one's a lower voice. Like, oh, so you want to quit your job, or oh, you're quitting your job, right? So that toning down is going to make them act on that ion. It doesn't make them question it. It makes them sort of answer the question by saying, yeah, I want to quit my job and go do this. The other one, toning up, is basically accessing their higher frequencies, right? Because the lower realms, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet in 1 through 7, is a lower, slower tone. But as I chunk up, if you will, or go up in a higher frequency, and now I'm in the mental realm, that's an octave higher than the first 7. So I'm in the mental realm, in that 7, in that higher mental 7, in the grid that we've been talking about. And so what I'm encouraging them to do by using a higher voice is having them tap into reframing their question, right? Oh, so you want to quit your job, huh? Well, yeah, I was thinking about it, but I'm not sure. See, there's no action there necessarily. They're just inquiring. And so by reframing it back, it's going to help them really figure out, do they want to quit it, stay there, or what's the real issue with their job, right? I can ask them, why do you want to leave the job? Oh, I'm just not happy. You're not happy, huh? Right? So one of them has them continually explaining or elongating or moving their ions from where they were, their present state to desired state. And then you have your tone down, which is having them tell you what their action's going to be. Right? Because on the physical realm, they are going to do a physical move. They're going to quit their job. That's a physical move. And in the higher realm, it's more of a mental choice. Well, yeah, I may think about it. I'm not sure, but there's no action yet. But the physical one is that they're ready to take action, their physical life, because it's manifesting from the energy realm, remember? And then it goes into the mental realm and into the physical realm. So when I'm toning down, I'm dropping it to a lower frequency to see if they're ready to take action in this physical realm. Not play around in the chemical, mixing stuff around, mixing thoughts together. In the chemical realm or the mental realm, right, or the electrical or spiritual realm, no, I'm asking them, are you going to make a physical move? Right? That's one of our things on the magic grid. Go watch the videos on the magic grid, because the second one is what's your move, right? What's moving you? What's your motivation? What are you inspired to do? Right? So this means that the client's ready to take action, or what they want, right? What are they ready to choose? What are they ready to commit to? And then it means, what do you mean by that? Right? So I can just pose back, well, what do you mean by that? How so? Tell me more. Right? I can keep asking these questions or questioning more energy until they have a clearer view of what they want to do. Because they're the ones talking it out. I'm just reframing back to them, or toning up or down. And I can even tone up higher if I want them to tap into their spirit realm. Okay? So tone each word back at them, right? So you're wanting to quit your job, okay? Right? Or you're wanting to quit your job, right? Each word has a tone, and each word together creates an order or a waveform, right? Or informed ions, information. So I'm just reframing their formed ions in a different format and sending it back to them and seeing how they then feel that, because I'm toning it on their frequencies. Cool? That making sense, guys? I know that got a little long, but that's it for today. In the next video, we'll sort of get into the unhealthy communication styles. All right? I appreciate you listening in, guys. Appreciate your time. I know it's valuable. And I look forward to bringing the next video to you, and love each and every one of you, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.